Imagine this for just a second. You walk into your bedroom, you gently close the door behind you, and instantly, all that noisy, demanding chaos of the outside world, it just fades away. It gets completely quiet. In this space, there are no cameras, zero audience, nobody is watching you. It's literally just you and God. No one hears your words, no one sees your tears, and nobody knows the fears hidden deep inside your heart. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're digging into a really fascinating piece of source material titled The Sacred Power of Hidden Prayer. According to the accounts we are going to explore today, these completely unseen private moments, they might actually be some of the most powerful moments of your entire life.
Now, this brings up a little profound question, and honestly, it's the core mystery of the text we're examining today. What really happens when you pray in secret? Does every single whispered word actually get heard? Well, the source material makes a really striking claim here. It notes that, from a biblical perspective, heaven doesn't measure prayer by volume. It doesn't care about an impressive vocabulary. Instead, it looks directly at the actual condition of the human heart.
Which brings us to Section 1, the secret of private prayer.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand this concept, the source takes us back to when Jesus completely subverted the religious culture of his time. See, back then, public prayer was practically a performance art, right? It was long, it was loud, and it was meticulously designed to be admired by a huge crowd. But notice the crucial distinction the text makes here. It's not that public prayer is inherently wrong. I mean, Jesus himself prayed publicly on certain occasions. It's actually entirely about the motive. When you shift to a private relationship behind closed doors, well, the audience is simply gone. There's literally no one left to impress. And that shifts the entire dynamic from a public performance to a true, authentic connection.
Moving on to Section 2, building intimacy with God.
According to our source, this intimacy operates exactly like our own human relationships. I mean, think about it. How do your absolute healthiest friendships actually grow? They deepen through private, totally honest talks. In this hidden space, you simply come exactly as you are. That means bringing your deepest fears, your highest hopes, your lingering questions, and of course, genuine gratitude. You don't need perfect theology, and you definitely don't need polished words to speak with absolute honesty. Bringing these incredibly specific, vulnerable human elements into a quiet space, that is exactly what the text says makes faith deeply personal, rather than just a rigid religious routine.
And that leads us to Section 3, preparation in hidden places.
Now, what's really interesting about the information we're looking at here is how the text introduces a fascinating historical pattern. It shows that God's greatest work frequently begins completely out of sight. Just look at the timeline of these historical figures for a second. David, he wasn't crowned overnight. He actually spent years totally isolated as a shepherd. Moses spent decades out in the remote wilderness before he ever stepped up to lead Israel. Elijah found God not in some massive earthquake or a roaring fire, but in a quiet whisper. And even Jesus intentionally and frequently withdrew from massive, demanding crowds just to pray all alone. The profound truth the source points out here is that unseen isolation isn't a punishment. Actually, scratch that, it's more like it's the crucial, necessary preparation for a visible purpose. I want you to just take a moment and really absorb this quote directly from the source material. Sometimes the first miracle is not around you, it begins within you. That is a really profound realization. It tells us that the initial transformation of prayer is almost entirely internal.
Let's look at Section 4, changing the person praying.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Often people start praying because they want God to fix some sort of external situation, right? They might bring up a financial struggle, a really painful broken relationship, or maybe just a difficult decision. But the text emphasizes that an entirely different kind of miracle is usually occurring at the exact same time. Through the practice of private prayer, the emotional state of the person praying slowly begins to transform. Paralyzing fear slowly becomes peace. Deep-rooted bitterness gives way to forgiveness. Tangled confusion clarifies into wisdom, and frustrating impatience matures into perseverance. It's like before the circumstances ever even change, the person navigating those circumstances is being changed from the inside out.
Of course, we all know this process isn't easy. The source directly addresses the massive friction of waiting. I mean, we live in a world where we get impatient if a web page takes 3 seconds to load, or if a microwave takes longer than a minute. But the biblical texts are full of people like Abraham and Hannah who waited years, sometimes even decades, for answers. The text points out that this waiting absolutely didn't mean God had abandoned them. It views it as a difference in timing rather than abandonment. The crucial takeaway here is that silence is not always the same as absence.
Bringing us to Section 5, the ultimate reward of prayer.
You know, a lot of people think the primary reward of prayer is simply getting the specific thing they asked for. Bam, request granted. And while the source acknowledges that sometimes does happen, believers throughout Christian history have actually discovered that the true culmination of this hidden practice results in quiet, incremental gifts, things like knowing God more deeply, finding an anchored peace right in the middle of total uncertainty, receiving the daily strength you need to just survive difficult seasons, and slowly, steadily growing in your faith. Now, these gifts aren't flashy, they're not dramatic, but historically they've been found to be far, far more rewarding and sustaining than simply getting a request checked off a list.
So the crucial point is really this. Every single day, millions of people around the world quietly close a door, bow their heads, and pray. There are no news headlines written about them, no crowds gather to watch, and there is absolutely zero applause when they finish. Yet according to the text, these completely hidden, headline-free moments matter deeply. Why? Because they are intimately seen and heard by God. Every single silent tear, every whispered word, and every sincere cry for help is witnessed.
The source leaves us with a thought that I want to pass directly on to you as we wrap up this explainer. If the most powerful prayers are not the ones spoken before massive crowds, but the ones offered when only God is listening, well, when was your last quiet conversation? When was the last time you spent time totally alone, behind a closed door, in honest, heartfelt prayer? It's a profound question to reflect on, isn't it? And it's one that just might invite you to step into the quiet and discover the sacred power of hidden prayer for yourself.